Last time, I attached the strip body of my '85 4Runner to the homemade automotive rotisserie and lifted it over the engine and frame. Now it's time to remove everything else that is still attached to the frame so I can start restoring it. The first thing I did was roll it outside for a bath. Look at all the grease and oil all over this thing. Before I pull this engine and trans off the frame, I'm going to give it the old pressure wash. Most of this grease and grime was so thick that I had to use the 0-degree tip to eventually cut through it. I was sure to blast out all the mud and debris on the inside of the frame as well, since that's the main reason these boxed frames rot out. And that was a pretty messy job. Now it's time to strip it down, starting with this rusty exhaust. I soaked these header bolts in PB. Once I had everything disconnected and the motor ready to pull, I removed the motor mount bolts. Now let's throw it into time-lapse mode and strip this down to a bare frame as fast as I can. This gas was almost 3 years old, and even though I added stable when I first got the 4runner, by now it was too stale to use in anything other than my lawnmower. So this wasn't getting the job done. So I borrowed this. So I still can't get this pitman arm to pull off the shaft of the steering pump for the life of me. I've been using everything I've got. Fire, hammer, lube, and it's pretty stubborn. I do have the acetylene torch over here, which I haven't used in about 5 or so years, but I also have the FLC 2000 by Fortune Laser out over here. I was just working on another project, and this is a 2000 watt continuous wave cleaning machine. And if you turn the settings up just right, you can get metal pretty hot. So we're gonna try that on the top of this pitman arm here and see if we can get it red hot and get it to slide off. I already have the tension on there still. Can't get that any tighter. And while we have this out and on, we'll go ahead and do a couple test areas on the frame, because that's the plan, is to use that laser cleaner to clean off this rust from the frame. The front of the frame is a lot better than the area that I just showed you, but coming around back, and it's a lot worse than the area I showed you. So we've got 3 different sample areas to try this, and we'll see how it does. So the beam from this laser can be adjusted to spread up to 300 millimeters wide. I've got it narrowed down to 30 millimeters just to cover the width of this pitman arm. Let's see if this works. Starting to glow, building up some heat. There it goes, look at that. I was fighting with this thing for like 2 days, and that took it right off. We'll let that cool off for a bit. Now we'll set the laser machine. We'll try 100 millimeters wide. And we'll try the front of the frame first. So we'll leave this at 100 hertz. It's a little bit less aggressive than some of the lower settings. And we'll leave peak power at 2000.
good. We're not hiding any rust under what's left here. And here's a before and after comparison here. And this wasn't too rusty to begin with. So let's move on back and try this center section. So for the scanning frequency, we're gonna go down a little bit. We'll do, try like 65. You can see I have some scaling on this area, and I'm going to need a little bit more power to get underneath some of that scaling. Here I stayed in the area a little bit longer, and you can see it turned out better. We will drop the scanning frequency down. We'll go 40. We'll try again. And that's better. You can see that I had a couple small spots where there was a big scale there, maybe there, where I may need to go a little bit more aggressive on my settings, but a lot better than up here, which after I scrape this off, you can see the whole surface is still rusty. So let's lower the settings a little bit more, and we'll go on to the back of the frame where it's super crusty. We'll do 30 hertz for this one. All right, I stayed in this area a long time. You can see the scaling of the rust almost was like just turning into molten metal. And it just scrapes right off. Now up here, where I just hit it really quick, you can see I do still have some of that rust underneath the laser clean surface just because it didn't penetrate deep enough. And down here is a lot better. This may be a two-step process. I may need to hit it once, go back and go over it with a wire wheel, and then laser clean it lightly one more time to get rid of any heavy scaling areas where there's still rust hiding underneath. But I'll do all that in a future video. Let's get back to stripping down the rest of this frame.
These U-bolts are always some of the most rusted hardware on these trucks. I've learned in the past that it's a lot easier to loosen them now while the axle is still attached to the frame than trying to loosen them after the axle is removed when it can roll and slide around. I used the Viva induction heater on the nuts first, and they were still too seized for my impact. Same for the rears. I'm getting them started while the axle is stationary, and didn't even bother with the impact since I was struggling to loosen them with the breaker bar. I'll go back and finish removing them after I detach the leaf springs from the frame. My goal is not to have to cut or damage any of these suspension parts, aside from the bushings, which need replaced anyways. I'd like to scrap all this and go with a new Old Man Emo 2-inch lift, but we'll see what the wildlife thinks about that. And now all I have left to do is remove the bolts to hold the leaf springs to the frame. And these guys are notorious for getting rusted and seized in place all around. So I've got the induction heater on standby because I'm sure I'm gonna need it. Previously, I would have used a torch to heat these bolts, which would have also caught the bushing on fire and made a big smoky mess. The induction heater is perfect because it focuses the heat in such a defined area that the only place the bushing gets hot is where it's contacting the metal hardware that I'm heating, and that allows it to slide out without torching the whole bushing. The induction heater is like using a cheat code, especially in Rusty, Ohio. I'll put a link to one of these in the description if you're interested. I did have to end up burning out one stubborn bushing. So here we are left with a completely stripped and bare 4runner frame. You saw I had no problem stripping the paint and rust from the front area. The middle area here was so-so, and the back did not go well with a 2000 watt laser cleaner, but I've got another tool on order that should help with this task. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching.